Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this the Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today we are going through a small adventure in India of this woman, Narinder Kaur. Now, for those of you that don't know who Narinder Kaur is, she is best known for going on panel shows to do things like this.
I feel that every Englishman and woman should feel proud, but we can't feel proud when that flag has been hijacked by far-right groups. England have got nothing to celebrate because they suppressed half of the world.
We did save Europe from fascism by defeating Hitler.
It doesn't work like that because you're saying, well, we stopped that, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have involvement in slavery links.
I've covered that video before, I'm not going to go through it again, but you understand the point. Britain can have national pride, but it's not allowed any of its national symbols, and really they can't have any pride whatsoever because bad stuff happened in India. That is effectively Narinder Kaur's entire online grift, and it is a grift. Narinder is a very vibes-based person whose argument hinges on exactly how her impulses feel at a certain time, and we'll get into all that. But anyway, the reason I've called this video Narinder Kaur has an identity crisis is because of a small journey she went on over the past week or so. It starts with this tweet: "Leaving the UK, this destination may interest you a little, watch this space." And to absolutely no one's surprise, it was India that she was going to, but obviously there were plenty of people replying to this tweet, and it really starts to show the identity crisis. So Julius replies to this tweet saying, "They finally deported you, took long enough," to which Narinder replies, "I'm a British citizen, born, can't be deported, not ever." Which personally is a challenge that I would not invite, but there we go. However, it really sets the tone for the rest of this video. Narinder Kaur is adamant that she is a British citizen. Notice she doesn't say, "I am British," she says, "I am a British citizen." Effectively what this means is that to her, the passport that she was holding in the first tweet, that is nothing more than a shield that allows her to stay in the country, and as we will see later, gives her benefits she would not necessarily get in India, despite the fact this entire video, as you will see, she's making it clear that she feels more at home in India than in Britain. And I'm not particularly here to call for any deportations on Narinder or anything like that. And I suggest that you don't do that either. All that does is play into her grift. Her entire grift is a victim narrative. And calling for the deportation of Narinder plays right into that. It's what makes her money. And I don't particularly want to make Narinder money. I don't particularly like her. But what I'm here to do is just analyse how Narinder goes about with her vibes-based identity, and how in reality she is actually an anywhere person, and in reality it's all of the incentives she has around her that makes her want to denigrate Britain and big up India, despite the fact that really she has nothing more than vibes to go on. And because she's an anywhere person, I doubt she actually knows what it feels like to be properly at home anywhere. And as I say, when it comes to her documentation, that is little more than a shield to say, well, I'm an anywhere person, I stay here for now. And for her entire life that's been Britain, but as we will go through, that could change to India. So this was her first tweet upon arriving in India, saying, "I am in the Fatherland, India. For the next week I will be finding out whether second-generation children of immigrants ever be repatriated to their origin. What do you think?" And it's accompanied by this 30-second video.
Hi, I am in Punjab in India, Amritsar, the fatherland and motherland.
Now, it's interesting here that she uses both fatherland and motherland. Do keep that in mind because it will be relevant in literally 2 minutes.
And the question I'm going to be asking for the next few days is it possible for second generation Indians and myself, first generation, to be repatriated with their parents' country?
Again, this is why I say she's an anywhere person. She isn't using the kind of poetic language that a lot of people, including me, would use. I don't just say England is the home of my parents, I say it's the home of my ancestors, my heritage. I feel there's a deeper connection than just my mum and dad are from there. The connection goes back potentially hundreds, thousands of years. I don't know. I've just got my heritage DNA, so I guess I'm going to find that out soon. But with Narinder, it's, you know, her mother and fatherland, as she said, means very little more than just, oh, it's where my parents are from. Which is why I say she's an anywhere person. Her connection to these places, it's very surface level, it's very vibes based, as I say, and as we'll go through, the things she feels like she needs to point out are, well, again, they're very vibes based. We'll get into it.
I'm not sure. It is a different world here, so let's see. will you get your wish come true?
So that's obviously a bit of a dig at the what Narinder would call far-right people who are constantly in her replies, saying you need to be repatriated, you need to go back to your homeland, etc, etc. And I reckon it's just a very, very high-level troll on these people. I don't think she's serious about it. I think to Narinder this has just been a holiday. And again, it's why I call it an identity crisis. She doesn't realise that she's not actually really fully Indian, fully British or anything like that. What Narinder is, as I say, an anywhere person. It doesn't matter where her parents are from, she'd go back there and be saying this same stuff. As we will go through, she essentially goes through this entire thing like she's making a documentary. This is not like she is trying to get the authentic Indian feel. She is going around like a tourist. And I do mean this when I say it. It reminds me of when my friends would tell me about their gap years in India. This is what it reminds me of, and it feels all very fake. And obviously Narinder was constantly replying to questions and tweets on this subject, and like I said 2 minutes ago, bear in mind she said it is her father and motherland in the video, yet just says fatherland in the tweet. So someone asked on Twitter why the fatherland and not the motherland. Clearly they didn't watch the video, and clearly Narinder forgot what she said in the video, because she says, good question, because fatherland is the land of your ancestors and your heritage. Finally she uses the word heritage. And motherland is the place of your birth. India is the fatherland and the UK is the motherland. Now, in reality, motherland and fatherland are completely interchangeable. They mean the same thing. What Narinder has done is simply Googled that and trusted literally what the first thing on Google says, where Google literally tells you in massive text at the top, highlights it, fatherland implies heritage, tradition, government and order, whereas motherland suggests nurturing and a place of birth. And that's all she read. It's like, oh, fatherland is my place of heritage. Oh, motherland is where I was born. Right, that's got to be it. However, if she bothered to look slightly further down in Google, amazingly, other people apparently have been asking this quite regularly, but when it comes to the UK, we don't use either fatherland or motherland. It's really weird language to us. But the most popular way of saying England is our home is to just say, well, it's home, it's Blighty, it's the old country. We don't have this kind of blood and soil rhetoric of the UK and England. We just don't have it, yet an anywhere person who has a complete vibes-based view of history wouldn't know that. And fortunately, the second question is India a motherland or fatherland? And India is often personified as Bharat Mata, or Mother India. In other words, for an Indian to call India the fatherland is really, really odd. And this is what I mean by she is an anywhere person. She doesn't know any of this. Her connection to India is through her parents and through the stories of her parents, which can pass on relevant things about that culture. That's all fine. The problem is with Narinder is that her entire identity hinges on, effectively, I'm a brown woman in the UK. And as I say, it doesn't matter if she was from India, Bangladesh, anywhere in the Middle East, or anywhere else in South Asia. It wouldn't matter to her. Her identity is, I want to denigrate Britain because it makes me money. It's all a grift, and it makes her an anywhere person, and she doesn't realise that. This is why she's having an identity crisis, because what does she really know of India? Not particularly very much, hence she's going around like a tourist. So Narinder's second tweet of India is this: the Golden Temple, I have never seen a more beautiful sight of my life, reduced me to tears every time. And is accompanied once again with a video that just makes her look like a tourist.
Now entering the Golden Temple, so I'm going to turn the camera around and you'll get to see.
As I said before, these are the exact type of videos that I saw from my friends when they were showing me photos and videos of their gap year. It would be this, and then the next picture would be them with elephants. As I say, this is not someone who is going back to study their heritage, to understand what life is really like for their parents. This is someone on a holiday. Ironically, as I say before, I'm not here to say deport her, because really what she's acting more British than I've ever seen her act in my life. Which, as I say, she keeps saying she's British, but as I say, it's this kind of left-wing, I want to constantly denigrate Britain as much as possible British. The type of British that the majority of the rest of Britain is consistently trying to reject, and has been trying to reject since George Orwell's day. Yet when it comes to her actually trying to go back to India, she acts the most British I've ever seen her. It's actually amazing. And her next tweet is exactly the same. There is no more beautiful place in the world than the Golden Temple. None. #Punjab. This is a woman on a holiday. This is not a woman trying to discover her heritage. It's a woman going around to the most popular tourist spots in the Punjab. I actually know people from the Punjab. This isn't how they act when they go back to the Punjab. I have pictures and videos of their family. I never see pictures or videos of the Golden Temple. They tell me it's there, and they tell me, oh, you can see it on Google. Because they're not there as tourists. They are there visiting their family. It's a completely different vibe to this. Very much 18-year-old on their gap year in India vibes here. And actually, guess the type of person I think those British girls that do these holidays are? They're anywhere people. Girls I know who did this exact same thing as Narinder, now live in Canada. Like, why? Because they just got fed up of Britain. That's the only reason. They don't have any connection to anywhere, really. They just like a bit of snow. Her next tweet was this one. They don't really believe in keeping in your lane in Punjab. No one suffers from road rage either. Welcome to India. And again, it is accompanied by this video, which I'm not going to put the volume on because it is literally nothing but horn beeps. And once again, the only comparison that I think is apt is my uni friends talking about their gap year in India. Again, she's been there for like a day and a half at this point, and all she can do is do the typical tourist stuff. Again, if you're trying to convince me that you went over there to discover your family heritage and what life's actually like over there, you're doing a very poor job of it. In fact, listening to it again, I do just want to pick out one thing that Narinder says in the video.
In India is mad.
Again, I've got to bring them up a lot, but my uni friends, gap year, India, all that. She is... that comment shows she is very uncomfortable with the way of life in India already. As I say, she's acting like a British person in India. There's no other way to put it. But at the same time, she really needs to lay on thick that she's Indian, otherwise her grift doesn't work. But she is completely a fish out of water here, and it is absolutely fascinating to watch. Because once again, this is just a really touristy thing to do. If you are Indian, you should not be a tourist within India. That is not how you should feel. And yet she gives the game the way. She does feel like a tourist. And if you feel like a tourist in your fatherland, as she put it, you probably shouldn't be calling it Fatherland. Anyway, her next tweet is traditional Punjabi cooking in the village. Hashtag India, hashtag Punjab. Again, whether these women do this in India every day and it's a completely normal thing, I'm not entirely sure. However, given that Narinder's parents are from the Punjab, you would expect that if this was normal in the Punjab, this would be the type of thing she was used to seeing at home. However, it's not. I would assume because her parents did their best to integrate. And if you've integrated well into British society, it's quite hard to call yourself Indian. And again, this is layered on top of, this is the type of video I would see from my uni friends. It's not really doing well for your claims that you're Indian. I mean, I'm happy to say you are Indian if you do feel at home here, but you're not acting like you're at home here. Her next tweet, again, not doing wonders for the I'm totally not a tourist here vibe, is Narinder saying, I am in the Punjab at the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre Memorial Wall, where you can see the bullet marks fired at a crowd of thousands ordered by General Dyer during British rule. We will never forget the brutality of the British and how many thousands of lives were lost in 1919, not forgetting how the very same people had just helped them win a war. Yeah, I'm not going to go into the big history of General Dyer and his massacre. I will say when news got back to Britain, literally everyone was outraged. He was stripped of his general rank. And generally, yes, British are ashamed that this is part of our history, and we regretted it literally the second after it happened. But anyway, here are Narinder's videos of this tweet.
Today I am at the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which happened in 1919, where a crowd of thousands had gathered peacefully, a sit-down protest against British rule.
See what I mean when I said it at the start? She's going around like she's making a documentary. Ah, don't you see? This is how the Indians live, as if there's some alien species to her. Again, really not helping with the claim of I'm Indian.
Now behind me is the memorial wall with the bullets which were fired on order of General Dyer to a peaceful crowd where they estimate 1,000 to 2,000 people were killed, women, children, men, sat peacefully. And that is why we do not forget the brutality of the British.
It's things like this that really started to annoy people, and does annoy me at the same time, because as I say, she is effectively acting as a British tourist in India, and yet she's saying we, as in I'm Indian, never forget about the other and their brutality, the British. Yet at the same time she's acting British and says she is British. Why? Because her passport is a shield that gets her benefits within the UK that stop her from losing those benefits. But as I say, it's a cope, it's a grift. She is just saying this to keep up appearances. I'm Indian, really. Look at all this racist attack. Give me money, put me on these panel shows. And it's what makes her money. It's how she makes a living. Why would she stop if it's making her a living? A point I want to make about Narinder Kaur is that she would probably completely 180 on this and start being quite a British nationalist if she saw it as a route to getting more money. At the end of the day, she's just a materialist. And the only reason she's larping around as a Indian nationalist is because it does make her money. It's how she makes her living. Why would she change that? All the incentives are there. Anyway, there was a second video with this tweet.
This hall has its own historic significance as it has 28 bullet marks which were fired by the order of General Dyer without any warning to the crowd of thousands who had gathered here to protest against the Rowlett Act. And this wall has been kept here forever. And it's been said over 1,000 people, over 1,000 were killed.
Yeah, it was an absolutely brutal and horrible massacre, and as I say, I am glad that General Dyer was stripped of his rank for it, and I think it's right that the British were horrified at the news of it. The British didn't want thousands of Indians killed for no reason, and I think it's absolutely fine for India to keep the wall there as a memorial to it. It did happen. It is horrible. Not everything in the British Empire was dandelion and roses. It's fine to have this objective view on history. The problem is that it's not an objective view from Narinder. It's, this stuff was typical from the British. They'd shoot people on the regular. Thousands of them, and it's just not true. This was out of the ordinary. Hence it horrified people. But as I say, that's all a grift from her. It's all because it makes her money. She makes enough money to go for a week to India to then make a documentary to make more money. It's all investment, really. This is just an investment for Narinder. And the next tweet, again, is more of this. The people of India hate tyranny as exercised by monarchs and British bureaucrats, with this video.
The people of India hate tyranny, oppression exercised by monarchs, landed aristocrats and British bureaucrats as much as any other unsophisticated, honest people.
Well, is this really all you can find? It's been 2 days. It's, there's bad traffic, the Golden Temple's really nice, look, there's some street food here, oh my god, look at all these murals saying that the British absolutely suck. There's no interest in trying to have a fair or decent understanding of how the Indians live or how they feel about the British. Because even then, that quote is just about tyranny in general, and of course the British are going to be cited at that point, because they were ruling over India, and I'm sure that there were some British bureaucrats who were autocratic and were tyrannical. India's a big place, and they were having to deal with rebellions as well. And guess what? Guess the type of soldiers they'd use to put down the rebellions? Other Indians. But there's no nuance to this, and why would she have any nuance? She doesn't get any money from being nuanced. Narinder Kaur's entire personality is to be an anywhere person and follow incentives, and all this is her following incentives. It's why I can't get mad at it. Our issue is much closer to home. It's the fact that actually we have native Brits that are making these incentives viable. They're the problem. Narinder's just a symptom of it. But unfortunately it's caused this identity crisis where there's no way you go around India like this and feel like it is your home. As I say, this is a woman on a holiday. This is not someone returning to their ancestral homeland. Her next tweet, I would argue, is her best attempt to actually try and understand how local people think and feel and act in everyday life. She was invited to spend some time with some school kids in India. Their command of the English language was exceptional. They speak 2 other languages too. I don't know why British kids walk around from school barely knowing 2 words of French, because the rest of the world speaks English. They are taught so much better here, discipline and passion. Now, again, I want to make this exceptionally clear. She is saying that the school system in India is much better than it is in Britain. I want to make that very clear, because you will need to remember that in 10 minutes or something. But I am perfectly fine with her doing this outreach programme, but once again, I would be shocked if these kids are seeing her as effectively just someone from the next village over. No. These kids very much are seeing her as effectively, again, a tourist. See what I mean? This is a documentary. This is tourism. This was little more than a soundbite for her. Oh, I want to ask these kids if they're happy with India. What are they going to say? No, I think it's terrible. No, this was just a tweet to effectively own the racists and say, oh, look, people really love India. I don't think any racist denies that. But by all means, if you think you'll be happy in India, go move over there. But I think there should be some acknowledgement that you are going to have to integrate into Indian life. As seen already, you're already not used to the traffic, and you're acting like you're just finding out all these things about India for the first time. Probably because you are. So again, it's quite hard for you to claim that this land in any way is your home. And I'd be interested to know what the locals think of you. Do they see you as Indian as well? They might do for all I know. I don't know. But I think it would have been very interesting to ask them. Anyway, weirdly, she was very quiet for 2 days while tweeting about UK politics and things like that, but had absolutely nothing to show from India. So I have no idea what she did for 2 days. But hopefully she says it in this next video, in this tweet. My last day in India, can second generation children of immigrants to the UK ever be repatriated with their fatherland? Again, by the way, using the complete wrong term for India, it is known as Mother India. Is India my home or the UK? And I assume she answered it in the video, so let's take a look.
So this is my last evening in India. You can probably hear all the beeping. I've had a ball.
Good, I'm very glad that you enjoyed your holiday. Again, more or less exactly how my uni friends describe their gap year in India.
I start this journey. Can a child of immigrants, second generation, ever come back to the fatherland and feel like they can be repatriated? Can they ever belong in this country? Because actually children of immigrants, you know, I had this, you know, almost bitterness that I could have been brought up in my own country instead of growing up in a country and being born in a country that didn't really want me.
It's quite an amazing statement, really, isn't it? She will constantly say that Britain is her home, she was born here, etc., etc., and then she, because of all the vibes and incentives that she has, she knows that she can't really say it and then keep expecting money, because if you say you're British, all of a sudden, all this repatriation, all these reparations and things like that, all of a sudden you have to pay it as well, because you're British. But then as she says here, oh, I'm bitter that I was born and brought up in the UK, and she claims that she wasn't wanted here, but my God, you're invited on enough panel shows to show that that's just not true. And I suppose this is the thing, I'd need to see Narinder talking to, I don't know, family that she has in the Punjab, but as far as I can tell, she's not even talking about that. She's talking about it in a very abstract way. Can I return to my fatherland? I don't know, do you have family there that you can, you know, build a network with already? Or are you literally just gonna end up like another anywhere person in some flat in the middle of a big Indian city? Or you'll go on to radio and television shows in India, I don't know, maybe get a job with BBC Asian Network and make a living that way, just talking to other people at the highest caste of Indian society, where really they're the type of people that are anywhere people as well and will move all over the world to do all sorts of different things. And if you consider that integrated and returning to the fatherland, then alright, fair enough, I suppose that is reasonably possible. But this is my big problem, I don't know what your plan is. What would be your plan to actually move to India? Because it's all been a very touristy experience, this. Like, you've made a documentary and don't actually plan to move there. I would love to hear what your plan to move there would actually be. Because at the moment, this all just seems to be rage bait. And this is why I've not been getting ragey at it, because I know this is rage bait.
And can we belong here? Because you live in a no man's land. You live in this void of, we don't really belong here, we don't really belong there. And actually on the flight, coming to India, I had to fill in the form that said foreigner. Foreigner to India. It's my parents' country.
And this is exactly what I mean. I didn't actually watch this in advance. It's just absolutely amazing how utterly predictable Narinder Kaur is. Yeah, you are an anywhere person. And the problem is that you would probably be much more accepted by the general British public if you didn't constantly try and denigrate it. People don't like you because you constantly denigrate Britain, and then you constantly say, oh, I'm Indian. Then you go there and you say, oh, I'm a tourist, I don't feel like I belong here. Well, if you want to feel like you belong somewhere, I would suggest that you go full throttle into trying to integrate in one or the other. I think you would find that, ironically, much easier in Britain. Mainly because you probably don't feel like a tourist here. You were born here, you have grown up here, and unfortunately incentives has led you to believe that maybe you are Indian, and then you go to India and find out, oh no, I'm actually a tourist here. and you have a complete identity crisis and find out actually you are an anywhere person. You could move to LA tomorrow, try and become an actor there, and you would probably feel as comfortable there as you did in India. You'd feel like a tourist, but eventually you'd settle in because you are an anywhere person. You don't really feel at home anywhere. Your best chance would probably be in Britain, but you've managed to follow incentives to the point where you have to act like you hate Britain. And Brits, believe it or not, do not particularly appreciate when people are trying to say they're British half the time, the other half their time they're denigrating it, and are getting paid for that pleasure too. It just doesn't feel great.
Where I am a foreigner is Britain. I'm a foreigner there. I'm made to feel like a foreigner every single day.
Well, again, that's mainly only because you keep claiming you're Indian, and then when people start poking you and pushing you on this, you'll say, "Oh, I've got a British passport," though. Like, to you, Britishness is just the passport, and you've put yourself into a position where you can't see being British as anything other than that, and therefore you just need to go on and denigrate it. Why do you feel like a foreigner in Britain? Because you feel more affinity with the people of India, who have a memorial to British tyranny, than you do to the Brits, who instantly were horrified at that news. And yet you don't even bother to try and look at the history of that. You just stop at Britain bad, India good. And I'm afraid there's a hell of a lot more to be an Indian than just that. And yet you've gone there and found that out, and now you feel like an anywhere person. You might say a nowhere person, in fact, because you clearly have longing to belong somewhere. And I do actually have a bit of sympathy for you there, but as I say, my best advice, stop denigrating Britain and try and do your best to make it feel more like a home, because we are a very open society. Over 80% of us don't think it matters that you're brown. You can still be British.
And things have changed so much in India. Every country has its problems. I'm well aware that India has its problems.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you saw them firsthand.
But what I don't feel is unwelcome. These are my people. This is my tribe. And actually other nationalities, foreign students here from Congo, everywhere, I spoke to them. They've never had racism. They said, we've never felt so welcomed. Everyone's so kind.
Well, maybe I'm wrong then. Maybe you do need to move to India and completely integrate there. It doesn't bother me which one you choose. I just want you to stop denigrating Britain and then saying you're British.
But they're not like that in Britain. Where's the kindness? Where is the welcome to immigrants?
I absolutely love how she stumbled over her words when she was about to say we. This is the problem people have. You'll put up a passport as a shield of, oh, look, I'm British. And then when it comes to describing Britain here, you stumble over your we. You don't want to say it. And as I say, I think what this basically is a midwit woman who has just been following incentives to the point where she can't quite find the actual nuance of her argument here. As I say, I feel bad for her because to me it's just cope and seethe when she says these are my people, these are my tribe. Because at the start of it she was saying she's a tourist. And yeah, if any British person was to say, yeah, English, Scottish, whatever, they're my tribe, they're my people, all of a sudden it's racism, despite the fact that she was about to say we, as in I am part of the British tribe, but stumbled over it because she's trying her best to distance herself from it. Again, because it plays into the grift. That is ultimately what I think her highest priority is. And I don't just mean a monetary grift as well, obviously it's a status-seeking grift as well. It's things like this. And it's caused her to be completely dishonest with herself. And I do have sympathy for that, I really do. But I have no sympathy for you constantly denigrating Britain.
That you so think are taking advantage of everything.
Again, she's talking about immigrants in Britain there, that, oh, we try and take advantage of everything. Well, yeah. We don't particularly want people coming into the country if they're going to disadvantage us. Why do you think you only spoke to immigrants who are going to universities? That's because it benefits India, because it puts money into India through the university system. And as well, it kind of needs to be pointed out, clearly if she's going to these schools and these universities, she's only really interacting with the highest castes in India. Carl Pilkington probably had a better understanding of India on his Idiot Abroad series, because he went to, obviously, some of the touristy areas, of course, but Ricky and Stephen Merchant also put him through just some of the ordinary place in India. You know, they called people up in the mid to low level caste saying, do you mind putting them up in a room for a day? We'll pay you. And he ended up having to, I think he actually had to leave because he just couldn't handle it. But that is probably a much better understanding and experience of India than what Narinder Kaur had. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad she's tried it, but I think if she did actually try and integrate and move to India, I think she would be in for a culture shock. I genuinely think so. Hell, she's already admitted that she feels like a tourist here, so of course she's got culture shock.
So, I know you're going to think this is a big rant and a big spiel, but that's... Could I live here? Could I be repatriated with India? Actually, yes. I did look at properties. My children are still in education. I can't do that right now. So you're stuck with me.
It's all a grift, by the way. That is a complete grift. That is a lie. She may very well have looked at properties, but she has no intention of moving, because what's her one reason? Oh, my kids are still in education. You said before that the education in India was better. Yeah, you're either lying about that, or you're lying about actually going to move here. Well, of course she's lying about moving there. She won't do it. I don't believe she'll do it. I think it's a complete lie. I think it is part of the grift. It's like what most people say. Yeah, I don't particularly like Britain. I'd rather move. Oh, why don't you then? Oh, my kids are still at school. You just said the schools are better. What are you lying about? You're lying about something here, and I wish you would be honest here. And she made another video later in the day. She's taken off the classic Indian garb and is just wearing a New York t-shirt, which, if that doesn't scream I'm a tourist, I don't know what does. Anyway, she says, I would seriously consider moving back to India. These are my people, my tribe. I'm resentful my parents had no choice but to up sticks and come to England for a better life, robbing me of my true being, and enjoying me to a lifetime of otherness. Which I think has to be one of the most ridiculous things I've actually seen Narinder say. What she's doing here, by the way, is actually just copy and pasting what other people have said in their replies about England. The people she'd call far right, the racist, whatever. This is a typical thing that they would describe of England in Narinder's replies. And she's just copy and pasting it. I don't believe her when she says this. She is obviously lying. I mean, we'll go through the video first and then I'll go through my analysis.
So I am here in India and I asked the question, is it possible for children of immigrants to be able to come back to the homeland, the fatherland, and be repatriated, reconnected, and be able to live here possibly? Because we always feel like we live in this no man's land, that we don't really quite belong in Britain, we don't quite belong here.
Yes, again, you're an anywhere person. You may want to call it a nowhere person. I get the feeling you wouldn't feel like this if you didn't effectively gaslight yourself into hating Britain. But again, it's where all the status goes, isn't it? So you didn't really have a choice.
But what I have felt more than anything is that I've found my tribe, my people. These are my people. I feel at home. It might be a 100% different world. It's a totally different world in India. But I don't feel like an imposter.
I just don't believe you. Why would you introduce this as, oh, I'm in a no man's land. I don't really feel English or Indian, or British, I should say, or Indian. And yet, what, it's taken you a week to have this realization that, oh, I really do belong here. I don't feel like an imposter. Just the most realist things I have seen is you in the middle of traffic going, this is absolutely crazy, I'm not used to this. And filming what looked like potentially perfectly normal street food being made. And you're there like a tourist with your camera, like doing zoom-ups, like, oh, look at this food, isn't that weird? Yeah, there's a reason you're recording it. It's because it's not normal. And you don't feel like it's normal because you're not used to being in India. And as I say, I would wager you would find it... I mean, you're already integrated into Britain. You're on panel shows so much. You interact with British people every day. And yet, what do you do? Oh, I'm resentful of my parents for not giving me a life in India and not having a connection to my fatherland, as you keep saying. You're denying that from your kids. Clearly you don't care that much. You don't care enough to give your kids the thing that you apparently are so resentful about missing out on. It's just ridiculous. These lies are ridiculously transparent.
And, you know, it's funny because on the plane over, I had to fill in a form. And I was a foreigner. It said foreigner coming to India. But I'm the foreigner in Britain. I feel a foreigner in Britain.
Again, she is saying this while she is wearing the t-shirt saying New York on it, which is the thing that you would typically see in almost every city in Britain. There will be someone with a t-shirt on with just some random American city printed on it. And, you know, I've never been to India, but from videos I've seen of India, even from other videos that Narinder's done herself, I've not seen anything like that. So again, this is why I say she's a midwit, because she thinks all that matters is her words, but it doesn't. The rest of your character and your actions do as well. and all of them have given the game away. No, yeah, there's a good reason you had to fill out a form saying you're a foreigner. It's because you are. But you don't have to do that in Britain, do you? Because on a very fundamental level, Britain is your home. I know a lot of people are going to get annoyed at that statement, but at the end of the day, that's the only conclusion I can come to from this documentary you've done.
I am a foreigner here, but I feel at home. They've made me feel welcomed. Just, you know, and I feel resentment. I feel resentment that my parents were forced to come over to Britain to make a life because India was stripped bare by the British.
Again, you're completely giving the game away. India was stripped bare by the British. No, not particularly. If you cite that we owe them like £100 trillion or something like that, whatever that ridiculous number turned out to be, I just know this is a lie. India has always had a caste system. India has always had a class that is much richer than the other classes. And I imagine your parents are from one of those lower castes. And I imagine they went over to Britain because you can't move castes in India. But in Britain, we don't have any system like that. People can move up and down because generally we're much more meritocratic. That is why they will have moved over. That is why the people I know from the Punjab moved over, because it did allow them to have a better life. And I highly doubt your parents would say, yeah, it was all Britain's fault. You have got that from the British intelligentsia. They are the ones that have told you about that, plus some of the foreign professors that are riding on that wave. Luckily, that wave is coming to an end. And again, if it was high status to say Britain is great, isn't that good, she would absolutely be on the side of, yeah, Britain did loads of good things all over the world. I'm glad I'm here. This is it's why I have sympathy for her, because she is the type of person to just follow along with the trends, and that just happens to be the trend at this time. But she probably would be Britain's biggest cheerleader if it was high status to be a British cheerleader. And I do mean that.
So they've had to come over to England to get jobs. And here I am now in England, where a country that doesn't really like brown or black people, and you don't.
See what I mean? Every chance she gets, boom, kidney shot to Britain, boom, back of the head. You're a racist country, boff. I know this because some students said that India isn't racist, bosh. She's just following trends. That's all this video is proving to me. She is not a thought leader in any way when it comes to this. She is not moving to India. This is all just a grift to upper status and upper income. That's all this is.
And I've spoken to foreign students here, like the ones I spoke to from Congo. I said, have you actually experienced racism? No, nothing. I've seen every nationality here being welcomed with open arms, welcomed from Britain. And they said, we don't want to come to Britain. We've heard they beat up our people. We've heard they don't like us. And actually our country is doing great. So that's what I've experienced.
I mean, once again, it begs the question, if we are a country that on the regular beats up black and brown people, why are you keeping your kids in education where apparently black and brown people are beat up all the time when they'll be safer and better educated in India? Again, your words don't matter when your actions show the complete opposite. It's incredible. It's incredible you think you can get away with lying like this, but as I say, she's just following incentives. Where those incentives come from matter much more than the symptom of Narinder feeling like an anywhere person while wanting to be a somewhere person. Rock in a hard place for it. I do have sympathy for that. And I'm not the only person who's noticed this discrepancy with what she is doing and what she is saying. Because someone points out, well, you're clearly much happier in India, why don't you stay there then? To which obviously she replies, well, my kids are in education. Well, we've gone through the hypocrisy there. To which a second person hops on the thread to say, you literally just said you resented your parents for keeping you in the UK and depriving you of your true being. Why are you now doing that to your children? To which Narinder says, yes, and hence why I will correct these things and move back at some point. We're in the process of OCI cards, let the return begin. Which for those who don't know, an OCI card is an Overseas Citizen of India card. Which is quite amazing because when it comes to Britain, all that matters to be British is your documentation. She has absolutely no documentation of being an Indian, so is applying for it, yet would still call herself Indian and not British. It's so annoying to absolutely everyone with a brain when you're constantly saying, I'm Indian, I'm Indian, I'm Indian, oh, but I'm British because of these documents, and then you don't even have documents to say you're Indian. What matters? The documentation or your DNA? Because that is effectively what Narinder is saying all that matters. It's either your documentation or your DNA. The thing is that it can't be both, because then you're just stuck in this case of, well, if it's only the documentation that matters, then genes mean absolutely nothing. But if it's only your genes that matter, then your documentation means nothing. Yet Narinder is a completely vibes-based person, so effectively what matters is who she's talking to. When it's a British person saying, oh, you should move to India, it's like, oh, but I've got a British passport, though. Ooh, you can't deport me. When it comes to people saying, well, you're not really Indian, though, because you said you feel like a tourist. And she says, no, I am Indian. My parents are from here, you idiot. And it is a very frustrating thing to witness. But as I say, this is all rage bait, so I'm not going to get too worked up about it. However, I did decide to have a quick look at what rights overseas citizens of India actually get. And it gives people the right to live and work in India indefinitely. However, ironically, you're not actually recognised as a citizen of the Republic of India. So even by this documentation alone, you're not actually Indian, because you don't have the right to vote, and you can't hold public office. And from the looks of it, it's much easier to revoke this type of citizenship than it is to revoke, say, British citizenship. Effectively, there seems to be two tiers of citizenship in India. You have native Indians, obviously, but then you also have dual citizenship, and this apparently seems to be what dual citizens get. And it means that they can't actually be fully Indian via their documentation, which again is quite sad. I'm not sure if there's a route to becoming a full-on Indian citizen after this. I imagine it would involve revoking British citizenship, and it would be very interesting to see if Narinder would go as far as that. My prediction would be that she wouldn't. Anyway, we will get into the last couple of tweets from Narinder. In this one she says, FYI, I travelled alone to and around India. For all those saying how India is unsafe for women, I felt no less safe there than I do in England, no less. Fact is, women the world over are at risk from violence and rape from men. This is not a problem reserved for women in India alone. Women are just as unsafe in the UK too. Which again, it's just rage bait. I'm not going to go into the details of it. But again, she just can't help herself. I mean, obviously there will be people in the replies saying, oh, careful you don't get raped in India, things like that. You know, people trying to jibe at her to then get this response, which is what they got, so well done. But I suppose the funniest part of this tweet is how she is trying to imply that England is unsafe in unique ways that India is not, while at the same time saying actually India and England are just as unsafe as each other. She can't quite bring herself to say India is actually safer than England. Probably because too many people would reply with news articles. That's about as far as I'm going into with that. Anyway, the final tweet is a quote tweet of Peter Whittle, who is making the point that if British or English people tried to talk about my people or my tribe in the way that Narinder did in one of the previous videos, they would be demonised to within an inch of their lives. Which I think is a fair point to make, but then Narinder says, I am British, I am English, I'm also Indian. Yet again, when she's going on her touristy things, going in the videos, it's always a we in an Indian sense and always they in a British sense. But as I said before, as soon as she's pushed on, oh, you're saying you're Indian now and not British, she says, no, I'm British, look at my passport. And it riles a lot of people up, and as I say, it is just rage bait. The best thing to do is just ignore it. This is a person who only exists because people on Twitter are constantly replying to her, but as soon as you actually stop replying to her, quote tweeting her, trying to ratio her, she just goes away. It's happening currently with Blacktivists. Black Lives Matter's just dead. It's just dead in the UK. You get the odd time where, you know, Hindi Andrews or some other black activist is going on the BBC to talk utter tripe. Again, the best you can do is just ignore them. The BBC's dying, for God's sake. The BBC are happy these days when they get viewership in their new dramas of 300,000 people. Do you understand how little that is? For a mainstream broadcaster to have a new flagship drama only get about 300,000 people in a country of just under 70 million, it's embarrassing. And the BBC is constantly now having to cut programming because it's just not going anywhere. So these people being invited to the mainstream, it doesn't matter anymore. Narinder Kaur, her main way of making money these days is through Twitter outrage. Don't give it her. You know, I'm just making this video to make the point that, look, this is all just a grift. She has lied throughout this entire process when she says the main reason she is not moving to India, and she will never say this, is because she does feel like Britain is her home. She recognises it as home. Hence, she had to fill out tourist documents to go to India She just wants the Indian documentation to say, look, I'm Indian, I got the passport, I got the citizenship, despite the fact that, as we saw from Wikipedia, it's not citizenship. It's a second-class dual national. You can't vote in Indian elections, you can't run for Indian office. The best you can probably do is go over there and be part of the media, like you are here. And ultimately, largely, your life probably wouldn't be too much different, because your life in London is probably similar to your life in some big Indian city in the media, because they are full of anywhere people who are metropolitan. This is why you don't feel at home in one or the other, because you're part of this class of people that don't feel at home anywhere. But you feel very strange for it, probably because of the values that were brought up through your parents. And as I say, I can only feel sympathy for you there. And I hope the same thing doesn't happen to your kids. I hope they fully integrate into Britain, because it means that they won't have the same identity crisis that you're having. And I think we will leave it there. So it's shill time. I did promise Dustborn would be finished yesterday, but I have no idea where Tharium is. I imagine he's ill and recovering from something, at least that's the last message I was told about. So as soon as he's back, I will make sure to finish Dustborn, because I hate that game and I want it over with. Saturday it's Laughing at the Guardian, so do come along to that. Hopefully Tharium will be back in time for that. Next Monday it's the Antiquity stream. Jack will be continuing with the Peloponnesian War, so do come along to that. It's going to be a special Tosh newscast next week. We're going to be doing it on Wednesday, because it's the budget on Wednesday, and we're going to have to go through it to find out exactly how bad it is. So expect a depressing stream there. And of course, videos out as and when I can make them. So that's everything I had for you for today. So please do subscribe, become a channel member, give super thanks and super chat. It's all very good stuff that keeps the channel going. And once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.